And so that's just the nature of this kind of self-consciousness. Often we call that ego, but ego's another story, isn't it? Even to, it's a useful story. It's been talked about for a long, long time. And of course, modern psychology has the concept of ego and superego and all of that. And yet, you know, when we really look for something tangible, like where is the ego? Exactly what is it? It's like grasping at air, isn't it? So we find out there isn't really an entity called an ego. It's it's what I call a useful fiction. Like it's a story that accounts for a part of the human experience, and it can be helpful by accounting for part of the human experience through the story of calling it an ego. But then we tend to treat the ego as something that's sort of real in some final sense, rather than it's just a useful way of storytelling, accounting for part of human experience, right? But it's one of the reasons that when we really look for a thing called an ego, that it is like grasping at straws or grasping at air. We don't quite ever find it. We just find thoughts, or we find feelings, or we find memories, or we find persistent patterns of behavior and habits and all sorts of other things, you know. A way of explaining that story is we call it an ego. So there's something about whatever ego points to that is, its innate nature is kind of sticky. It's grasping, it's pushing things away. And that's what gives us that sense of solidity to our identity, a sort of a sort of someoneness, but a someoneness that's not so fluid, is it? It doesn't feel particularly fluid, and even though it is, ego is really a process, right? It's not a thing, it's a process. And so where we started the day with, what we've been, you know, orienting the teachings for the whole day with is another story that I call being, the story of being, we might say, a way of pointing to something else, something that I would suggest is more fundamental. Now I could use the other ways of articulating that called Buddha nature or spirit. I like using the word spirit, although it's a bit out of fashion, I suppose, for a lot of people, but I like it. Christ consciousness. Of course, nowadays we like just the word consciousness, the word awareness, you know, but these are all their own sort of one word stories in a certain sense, but they're articulating something that's real. There's a reason that we come up with so many ways of describing something, because what we're describing is common, right? It's something we can all, it's common to us. Of course, for anybody, the experience of ego is common to us. Um, so we all understand that, even though something like our true nature or being or emptiness, that's also common to us, although we might not really be that conscious of it, right? And the reason for that is because it's not sticky. Our true nature isn't sticky. It's not pulling and pushing. Not because it's sort of good or for some noble purpose or reason, but its nature is, it just is. It is. And you know, one of the things that Buddha called sort of the, sometimes you would refer to what we might call reality now as suchness of something, the suchness of anything, you know. So the suchness of a human being in this sense, the suchness of it. What's the suchness of us, right? What's deeper than the whatever our process of identity might be at any given moment. And the thing that makes it appear difficult or confusing is because our attention is being drawn. It's like that's the habitual draw what we think of as ego is it is always, it's sticky. It's just tends to be sticky.